distinguished guests, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon and a warm welcome to the official launch of the report FPCI Survey on ASEAN Dialogue Partners 2025. Strategic Autonomy at Stake, ASEAN in the Age of Global Disorder. On behalf of the organizer, Foreign Policy Community of Indonesia, FPCI Research and Analyze Unit, supported by the mission of Canada to ASEAN, it is a true honor to welcome our diplomatic corps, experts, and journalists joining us here at Auditorium Professor Dr. Hasim Jalal and virtually via the FPCI YouTube channel. My name is Gabriela Keisha, and I'm honored to serve as your master of ceremonies for today's event. To begin our agenda today, let us take a brief look to work and missions of Foreign Policy Community of Indonesia to the following video profile.
Terpikir dan terpana dan terdiam, ku melihat sadarku bertahun bersama terwujudlah terbayang yang terindah, yang terhampar, berlalulah sadarku semuanya, perasaan, rasa cinta, kaulah yang diinginkan aku dari mimpiku, dari mimpiku. Coba terbangkan hayalku dari sadarku. Terbayang yang terindah, yang terhampar, berlalulah sadarku semuanya, perasaan, rasa cinta, kaulah yang diinginkan aku dari mimpiku, dari mimpiku. Coba terbangkan hayalku dari sadarku.
Ladies and gentlemen, we shall now proceed to the opening remark. To start our agenda today, please welcome Dr. Dino Patijalal, founder and chairman of FPCI, to the floor. Dr. Dino, the floor is yours.
Thank you. First, I'd like to begin by inviting all of us to rise up for a moment of silence for the Indonesian soldier that died in Lebanon. Yeah. Please have a seat. Well, maaf lahir batin, selamat lebaran to all of you. I know I haven't heard any of you physically, but intellectually, or if any comments have been taken wrong way, we apologize on behalf of FPCI. Yeah. So maaf lahir batin is please forgive us physically and mentally for any wrongdoing. I want to welcome Ambassador Abra Dickey. Thank you so much. The Perm Rep of Canada to ASEAN, and also Ambassador Joanna Anderson, Ambassador of New Zealand Mission to ASEAN, Yonita Tani Koji san. We had a nice dinner last night. Japan's ambassador to ASEAN, ambassador of Republic of Union of Myanmar to ASEAN, Aung Myo Mint. No, it's not here. Ambassador Gerard Tho from Singapore to ASEAN, Tiffany, ambassador of Australia to ASEAN. I know I'm missing somebody. If Ambassador Philippines to ASEAN, and she is the Philippines is the chair of ASEAN this year. And actually, FPCI is organizing ASEAN Week for civil societies in Cebu in May. So we look forward to our presence there, and also we look forward to hosting a talk for your foreign minister, hopefully. Yes, sorry, I'm spilling secrets that I shouldn't be talking about. So it's been an interesting year. Last year we had the FPCI annual conference on Indonesian foreign policy, and the theme was the next world order, right? And a lot of people were asking us, you know, what are you talking about, the next world order, right? But I'm really glad that now that seems to be the consensus, that we are moving into something else, and the old US-led liberal international order, whatever you call it, rules-based international order, is collapsing, right? Whatever is taking place, shaping up, remains to be seen, but that seems to be the consensus. If you go to Davos, if you go to Raisina, if you go to Munich Security Conference, and all these places, that seems to be the predominant theme. FPCI was fortunate. We were in Munich, right? And we were in Raisina, and recently we were in Chatham House Conference and so on. And I think what is unique, I mean, we've seen turbulent international order before, but what is unique, one is not just the feeling that the rules base is collapsing, but the feeling that there's a climate of fear going on. You know, that's one. And that's something new, right? And I think we know why there's a climate of fear is going on, because one superpower is trying to dictate its way around and creating regime change and forcing things that are against against international law and UN Charter. So that's one. And secondly, the use of force in settling disputes. You know, when the Community of Nations established the world order after World War II, the whole idea was, look, let's leave behind this use of force, a world order where the might is king, yeah, and move on to something different. Right? And of course, we've seen a use of force throughout the last 7 or 8 decades, yeah, since the end of the World War II. But what is quite different now is the ease and you know, the way it is used to settle disputes. And for FPCI, we made a statement on this. The attack, the killing of the Iranian leader, you know, it's the first time a foreign leader of any country directly uses military means to kill foreign leader of another country, right? I haven't seen this by an American before. Gaddafi was different, right? Saddam Hussein was different, right? This was using missiles to directly kill the foreign leader of another country. It worries me, right? So this climate of fears and the use of force so easily, and even now with the what do you call it, the negotiations that they're doing, and the threat made by President Trump that, look, if you don't listen to what I do, I'm going to obliterate you and your desalination plants and things like that. Is a challenge to our independent and active foreign policy, right? I think this is the time when, at some point, people ask, what does being independent and active mean? This is the time. It's not about not taking sides in conflict. It's not about that. This is about, yes, it's not about, it's not just about not taking sides, but more importantly, it's about taking a stand when things are wrong and against your principles and against the principles of international law. And taking a stand is much more difficult than just saying we don't want to get involved. You understand? So this is why it's very important time, not just strategically but morally and conceptually for Indonesian foreign policy. We know there's war in Europe. We know there's war in the Middle East and so on. And I come back to Jakarta. It makes me realize how special ASEAN is, because I look at these wars and I'm reminded that, hey, this is what happened to ASEAN. This is what happened to Southeast Asia. Remember, I remember I was in 70s, was watching the Vietnam War, and I hugged my dad and said, Dad, are they coming for us? Is war coming? And Southeast Asia was divided, full of bloodshed and violence and regional wars, right? And that was behind us, right? And I think we should never take that for granted. Ambassador Gerard Hoare was not even born back then. So I'm just kidding. But something that we should never take for granted. And I was in a seminar recently in one ASEAN country, and there was one speaker from an academic, a professor from an ASEAN, Southeast Asian country, who's so skeptical about ASEAN. ASEAN is no good. ASEAN not doing this, not doing this. But hey, look, you look around the regions of the world, and ASEAN is this one region that have changed dramatically compared to 50 years ago. When there was Vietnam Wars, there was the Cambodian conflict. When the region was divided into two, there was so much mistrust between countries and region, and so on, right? So it's a long journey that we have done, and now I think ASEAN in May have to think seriously about where we want to take ASEAN. How do we want to protect ASEAN's resilience? And our advice to the foreign ministry, and that's foreign ministry rep here, but we are conveying this to the government also directly. Look, government of Indonesia, pay attention to ASEAN. There is a perception that Indonesia pays more attention to the global stage rather than to our regional neighborhood. And that perception, rightly or wrongly, is unhealthy. And what happens at the global level should reinforce our belief that it is in ASEAN that we must prioritize our international relations. And why do I say this? Everyone talks about the world order, right? What is the world order? UN Charter, the global architecture. Yes, maybe. Our definition of the world order, it is the sum of regional orders, right? The global order is the sum of regional orders. If you have a global order, but Southeast Asia is dysfunctional, South Asia is dysfunctional, the Middle East is dysfunctional, Africa is dysfunctional, then you don't have a working regional order. But if you have regions where there's coherence and peace and cooperation, yeah, internally and between regions, then you have a functioning regional order. So this is why, in our view, ASEAN's meeting this year in May will be very important because it allows us to redefine the regional order in Southeast Asia. And this is why our exercise with the led by Dr. Sofwan, and thank you, Ambassador Ambra, for supporting this project also, and for giving us the independence, which is the way we always done it in the last 4 or 5 years, to work on this, because it is very important to understand what the people of ASEAN think about our dialect partners, especially because I think Southeast Asia, ASEAN, is the only region in the world that has that mechanism. There's no such thing in Northeast Asia. There's no such thing in Europe or in the Middle East, right? I hope you find this useful. There's a lot of things that are interesting to find out. What do we think about China, about the United States, about Europe, about Canada, and I hope all these findings will be useful to our policymakers in Kamloops. But FPCI will be very aggressively pushing the government pay attention to the region, because it is in Southeast Asia where Indonesia is expected to lead. And global stage is nice, but if we don't pay attention to our neighborhood, our capital to lead on the global stage and play a role is also diminished. So I'll stop there, and I want to thank the team who has done a lot of work throughout the last few months to work on this, led by Dr. Sofwan, also Calvin, I think Jenny and Afni also part of this group. Yeah. So thank you very much. I'm sorry I talked too long. Yeah. All right.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dino, for your insightful remarks. And now it is a privilege to invite Her Excellency Ambra Dickey, Ambassador of the Missions of Canada to ASEAN, to deliver her opening remarks. Ambassadors, the floor is yours.
Well, it's always a tall order to come after Pacdino, so I will maybe not be quite as passionate and enthusiastic, but that's not to say Canada is not equally passionate and engaged. I wanted to respond to your last point on why ASEAN is important, and start there and say Canada knows that it's important. So for those of you around the room who are in any doubt, take it from me. We fully understand the importance of ASEAN, the importance of ASEAN's stability, of ASEAN's centrality, and of the important roles that all of the countries within ASEAN are playing and will continue to play in the region. Our Prime Minister made the ASEAN Summit in KL his first trip to the Indo-Pacific region as a whole. He has since participated in APEC, visited China, India, Japan, Australia, and several others. So take it from us, this region matters. And I think especially now, given global uncertainty, global turbulence, groupings like ASEAN matter too. We were just discussing before coming in here the importance of middle powers, and I noticed it came up as well in your video. That ASEAN is a group, if I may, I know that the topic of middle powers is perhaps controversial, but we certainly see, the grouping of ASEAN as an extraordinarily powerful group of middle powers who have the influence and the ability to shape the rules-based international order and the foreign policies that will be based upon that. So Canada's here to support that objective, and I think Canada, like many countries, we appreciate data. It helps us inform the policies that we make. It helps us know where we have some homework to do, and it helps us to know what the people are thinking. I think all of us in this room probably have a tendency to speak with others who think a lot like us, who sometimes look a lot like us, and who are foreign policy experts and tend to get pretty dedicated to the issues that we've always worked on day in and day out. And it's really important for us, for Canadians, that we're hearing from students, from experts, of course, but particularly I was noting, particularly from the Gen Z and the younger Gen Z and millennials, and we're really happy to see that feedback. So, you know, for us, it was an absolute pleasure to be able to support the work of the FPCI. We really appreciated it. We were very honored to have gotten a briefing on the outcomes yesterday, and I think we have some areas where we know that we will need to continue to work. Canada has been a strategic partner of ASEAN since 2023. We are going to celebrate 50 years of dialogue partner status with ASEAN next year in 2027. And I think now is exactly the time that we need to be refocusing the work that we're doing here in this region. And we need to be refocusing it both with ASEAN, but with the valuable dialogue partners that we also know are contributing greatly to this conversation. We have several of them here in the room who are good friends and good partners for us. So let me just say a huge thank you to the FPCI, to the entire team who I know worked very hard on this. I'm personally very much looking forward to the conversations that we are going to have today. And I think that the next year will offer numerous opportunities for Canada and for ASEAN to continue to work together even more closely with the 50 years, with a new ASEAN-Canada FTA that we know will be concluded in 2026. And if there's people in this room who have a voice in that space, please do use it. And we really look forward to seeing some greater outcomes from this same survey next year. So thank you again to you and to the whole team.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you so much once again, Your Excellency, for your valuable message and for the continuous support of the missions of ASEAN. Before we move to our next agenda, allow me to please to welcome to all delegation from Mula Warman University from East Kalimantan. Please, everyone, give a big round of applause. They are students from Mula Warman, East Kalimantan, who are visiting to Jakarta and enjoy joining with us for today's event. Now we will dive into the inside of the survey. This year edition marked a histories, milestones, and the first cover to all ASEAN dialogue partners, including Canada and New Zealand. To present this finding, please welcome Dr. Sofwan Albana Koiruzat, Supervisor and Report Author to FPCI Survey on ASEAN Dialogue Partner 2025. Dr. Sofwan, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It is a great pleasure and great honor for me to be here. Excellencies, professors, ladies and gentlemen, this is a great opportunity today amidst a lot of bad news. We can gather today to share some, happy, but also not so happy in some parts. Happy for us because this is the report which is very special to us. First, because it is the first time where our survey covers all dialogue partners. We have tried to develop the survey gradually from lower numbers of dialogue partners because of the challenge of gathering the information, the network, the database. And now we are confident enough to cover all of the dialogue partners and with respondents from all 11 ASEAN countries. So it is a very happy achievement for us. But it is also not a very happy situation because, as Pak Dino mentioned, we are in the middle of global turbulence, or maybe borrowing Gramsci's term, the old world is dying, the new world has yet to be born, and it is time for monsters. It is time for morbid symptoms, and we have seen these morbid symptoms everywhere. Pak Dino has mentioned about how the international rules-based order is under threat. It is no longer shift. It is a rupture, disruption, huge change that is happening in front of us today, where a minister of war, a secretary of war from the great power threatened to use, let's say, international crime as part of the negotiation. No mercy, no quarter, which is clearly something that is against international humanitarian law. And I think it is amidst that certain context that the survey is becoming very important, because in this changing world, ASEAN, as Ambassador already mentioned, is important and needs to be continue to be important and playing an important role in shaping this the world amidst these uncertainties. And thus, ASEAN's relationship with its dialogue partner is very important, including to the ones involved in this current tension, the United States, China, and all dialogue partners there. So the question that very much overshadowing our last survey here is about how the current turbulences, including last year was the announcement of the package of tariff. So I need to remind you that the survey ends before the war in Iran. So it might be a bit different if we conduct it this year, but we try to capture the perceptions of the people of ASEAN, especially with 5 segments in year 2025 after the geoeconomic shocks, after the tariff announcement and the following negotiations, as well as ASEAN's response towards it. ASEAN established the ASEAN Geoeconomic Task Force, ASEAN in general responding not through retaliation but through negotiation. But what is often makes us wonder is how actually the people of ASEAN see this. Because what we see on the news, what we see on the analysis are how the governments, how the states are responding. But ASEAN is committed to be a people-centered organization, and thus it is very important then to look and to listen to what the people actually understand, perceive, and aspire. So it is that context that leads to the this survey, and now we are proudly sharing with you the results of the survey. Because of the limited time, of course, we will only show you some of the most important findings of the survey, according to us, of course. You might have different takes on what are the most important takes, and we invite you to do so by looking at our website, fpcisurvey.org. You can dig deeper all of the data there. But here is the our take for the results of the survey. Let's move. Oh, I can move it by myself. Oh no, it's not moving. Yep. So just to remind you, this is our 6th iterations of the survey. And as I mentioned, this is special because now we have achieved the all dialogue partners, and we have been developing the survey from 1,000 respondents to now we have over 2,000 respondents. So hopefully it is more representative. We use targeted purposive sampling by looking at specific segments of the ASEAN people. It's five. It's government officials, especially those working in international relations related or ASEAN related agencies or ministries. And then business sector, academia. This includes think tank and civil society. And the other one is, of course, the students, because we want to hear and to know the view of the future of the region. Uh, we developed the questionnaire through several stages. First, the team developed the draft of the questionnaire, and then we test the questionnaire to several groups of people, and we do some FGDs, focus group discussion with experts, with panel from different ASEAN countries. And based on the feedbacks, we refine the survey, and the result of that refinement is the questions, the questionnaire that we send it to all of you. The database is, of course, more than 2,000. We begin with more than 10,000 targeted emails from our database in those five categories. But along the way, we expand the database because we think that it is important to capture as much as possible because of the this year we see a kind of survey fatigue where the response are not as fast uh, as in the previous survey, maybe because of the anxiety of this changing world. But it is not only happening to our survey, Dr. Tan. It is also happening to the ICS survey as well. So we communicate with the survey team in Singapore as well, and we experience the same thing. Um, so, but finally, we successfully get the results from more than 2,000 respondents. 30% from Indonesia, and other ASEAN countries are quite well represented, hopefully. Let's move to the next slide. Let's go to the, wait. Yeah, the survey is mostly filled by Gen Z, millennials, and Gen X, but I think this represents generally those who are active in the business, in the academia, and in the government, as well as representing students today. So these are the most important takeaways. We put 10 most important things according to us. First is that the US, because the main context that differentiate this year is the geoeconomic turbulence due to the tariff policy. So we are wondering on the impact of that towards the perceptions. First, the US unilateral tariff policy is not perceived positively in ASEAN. It's, of course, it's intuitively we know this, but now we have the evidence. The majority of the respondents view the reciprocal tariff as unfair and unjust, and most of them also believe that the policy harms ASEAN member states' economies and poses risk to international trade. Let's go one by one. So we combine this number from very agree and disagree with the statement. Yeah, it's even actually surprising because lower than maybe the expectation, right? Many believe that it harms ASEAN member states' economy and poses risk to international trade. Second, this is also interesting. We see that there might be a connection between the negative perception to the tariff and the perception to the United States. Because we ask directly, the enactment of the US reciprocal tariff affects my perception towards the US significantly, and more than half say that, well, yes, the tariff did affect their perception towards the United States. Of course, more research are needed to make the causality, but we found some indications. For example, We compare this with last year. Last year, those who put the United States as the most trusted partner was on 10.65, but it is changed into 5.47% in 2025. As a comparison, the image of the European Union relatively consistent, around 13%, while China increased from 10.45 to 12.28. On the question on which partner the respondents respect most, the number also shows similar decline. In 2024, it was 13.31. Now it is 6.16. So of course, this is just an indication, and we cannot claim strongly, but intuitively might be correct. Let's move. Third, this is the consistent finding from our first survey. Japan continues to retain its position as the dialogue partner with the highest positive image, highest trust. It is the most trusted. It is the most respected. It is the easiest to work with, etc. We add some new, more specific questions on that comparison part, and Japan also get this the most generous in sharing technology and the country that creates the highest quality jobs, and the one who create the most meaningful youth program, and the favorite tourist destination. I think that's this is pretty much confirmed with the number of tourists actually. Yeah, but yeah, so this is the number. Japan, Australia, EU, while China and US ranks fourth and fifth. Let's move. You can see the detail a bit in a more detailed manner in the survey. Let's move. But this is the fourth point that might also be important to be take to to be put attention to. While Japan is the most trusted and the partner with most positive assessment, China is still perceived to be more and more important. China is viewed, how to say, when asked about the most trusted, it is Japan. When asked about the most, the friendliest, the easiest to work with is Japan. But when asked about which one is the most important partner for the future, it's China. So it is interesting to see that despite the worries, it is. I mean, most of the respondents, how to say, see that it is a reality that they need to work with China because China is going to be more and more important, and mostly because of the economy. The questions in which China tops the answers are on the economy, a country which supports ASEAN's growth, deliver tangible benefits that matter to ordinary people, including trade and job creation, and offer products that are good value for money, and also top of mind export destination. So it's mostly economic and development issues. So this is the number. China number 1, EU number 2, United States number 3. This is interesting because China continue this number. Let's move. Let's move. This is also, I think, very important for other dialogue partners. Is that some dialogue partners have niche prominence in ASEAN. If we use the middle power term, they usually focus on their niche leadership in specific issues. I think that also applies in the dialogue partners here, because if we look at the result of the survey, there are several niche areas where the leadership was at least in the perception of the people of ASEAN, in the respondents, are not in the great powers like the United States or China, but in this other alternative powers. And if we look one by one, each of them have their specific comparative cooperation advantage. So I think one takeaway from the survey is that the dialogue partners need to find which niche is actually their strength. For example, if we look at these issues, there are differences. EU is very strong in things like climate change, green economy, and the United States is in transnational crime. And we see UK, EU, ROK also have spheres where they have their own strength. Let's move. Yeah, if we look one by one, Australia, it's interesting that Australia is viewed very positively in the education. So in the question on which dialogue partner which you prefer if you want to send if you want to continue your higher education or sending your children to higher education, it's Australia. We actually expect some other like the United States or Japan, but it's Australia. And then South Korea is very strong in cultural and soft power. We ask about if what is your favorite drama and TV. So yeah, majority of them are looking at Korea. Let's move. Yeah, but Hollywood is still strong. United States is still the second. And recently, China is very strong. Maybe you also watch the short dramas in your cell phone, right? The CEO that is, how they say, masquerading to be an office boy. United States still seen as very important partner, particularly because of their impact to the international order. Like it or not, United States is a very important dialogue partner here, and everyone agrees with this. When asked about which dialogue partners that you think has changed the way countries cooperate globally, the United States is on number one. Let's move. This might also be interesting because usually in the academic work or in the works of the observers, we work theoretically or conceptually or through behavior of the state. But now we get the evidence from the respondents. For example, we see this. We ask them about the perceptions on the closeness of their governments towards different countries. And we see that ASEAN is pretty much now a bit tilting to China. But the most, we see that Laos see the highest differences between China and the United States, while the Philippines tilting the most to the United States. Of course, this is not necessarily objectively true because this is the perception of the respondents towards their own government. We don't know, but that's the image that the respondents have on their governments. So basically, the respondents see that the governments are very close to China and close enough to Australia, EU, Japan, ROK, and the United States. Let's move. There are unmet expectations on the contribution and role of the ASEAN member states as well as dialogue partners in various strategic issues. Many of the answers are none, showing the anxiety of about international order. Let's move. So this is consistent with the finding on the anxiety about the future of multilateralism and multilateral trade. Let's move. But it's also interesting to see that ASEAN says that there is a room for collaboration here. ASEAN needs to respond collectively. Let's move. And there is a strong aspiration to strengthen multilateralism and diversification by working together with other partners, including connecting. There are supports for connecting ASEAN initiatives with RCEP, with CPTPP, with EU, etc. I think that's the main takeaways. Let's go to the recommendation. Let's move next to the recommendation part. Next part. So next part, I mean to the recommendation part, and I will just close it here. So we have several recommendations based on those findings. You can see the details on the report. Let's move. So next, do you have next? Yes. So if you want to dig deeper into the findings of the survey, you can scan the QR code here and read all of the reports there. Or alternatively, you can check at the website, fpcisurvey.org. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sofwan, for the comprehensive presentations. And now we will transition directly to moderated discussion. Joining our moderator for today, Dr. Sofwan, we honor to have our distinguished panelists. Please welcome Professor Dewi Fortuna Anwar, co-founder of FPCI and research professor at BRE. Be my guest, Professor. And also, please welcome on the stage Dr. Tang Siew Moon, Senior Fellow at ICS Yusof Isaac Institute, to the stage. Dr. Sofwan, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So now, after listening and looking at the results of the survey, of course, it is interesting to get the takes from the real experts here. So I'm inviting Bu Dewi and Dr. Tang to give their, how to say, your take on the result of last year's survey, of this last survey. What surprises you, if there is any? Because, of course, many of these are pretty much intuitively expected. So what's next?
Thank you, Dr. Sofwan. Firstly, I'd like to congratulate you and the FPCI team for doing a really excellent survey. This is becoming quite an established institution now for FPCI, that we are doing a lot of surveys. So we are giving ICS a running for its money. Because usually we quote only the State of Southeast Asian survey and every other thing. So and of course it's much more sophisticated and it's well established, and Suman used to have that one. And now I think that FPCI has it. There are, the survey is available, and I've downloaded it on my iPad because my eyes are getting very old. I can't read it anymore. There are a number of things that I would like to. First, I'm happy, but I'm still surprised. Firstly, in terms of the participants of the survey, it's very good that the Gen Z is actually the majority. The baby boomers are really, they're declining. The millennials are there, But the fact that, so this is the Gen Z. So this is really the people of the tomorrow, the future generation. So their opinions, I think, matter in terms of their future trajectory. Secondly, I'm surprised and actually quite disgusted at the fact that besides Indonesia, 30% of the participants are from Indonesia, most of the other ASEAN countries score very low. And Laos, I bet you didn't read that, the Laotians, over 10% of the respondents were from Laos. Not from Malaysia, not from Singapore, not from Vietnam, not from the Philippines, but Indonesia, Laos, and Timor-Leste. So what does it tell you? So that most of the countries probably don't care or the survey fatigue, but this tells you maybe ASEAN fatigue. Yeah, and I'm happy to see that the Timor-Leste are willing to go on the internet and read and spend time here, and people from Laos. But this happened again. The ASEAN Foundation did a survey again, and usually it is among the established ASEAN member states where the lowest respondents come. The least interested about ASEAN come from the founding members of ASEAN. So the newer ASEAN member states tend to pay more attention, yeah, to ASEAN and not us. And Singapore has tended to be the worst perpetrator. They are not interested. They don't answer surveys, and when they say, how important do you think ASEAN is, it tends to be lower. Why? And I asked them, they say because Singapore positioned itself as a place where does the Singapore Airlines fly? So it is the hub of a global network. So the destinations are where Singapore Airlines fly. So they're not terribly focused in the region. So clearly, we ASEAN, this is a challenge for ASEAN. Now, in terms of the results, the fact that students are the most respondents, I think is very good, could do for them. In terms of surprises, no real surprises. We know intuitively, as you mentioned, that China is up and the US is down in terms of perceptions. And this is very telling in the original 5 ASEAN countries. For decades, most of these countries have tilted to the US. The suspicions of China were very high, very right. And according to the State of Southeast Asia, Indonesia started to tilt under Pak Joko Widodo during the intensive infrastructure development and the BRI and so on. And so the focus is very much economic. So we began to see a tilt towards China. But at one point, it was very even. But the tilt against the United States started with Trump 1. So Indonesia flipped during that time. At one time, 73% suspicious of China and 73% suspicious of the United States. So we really showed Indonesia's, a very free and active foreign policy. But then after a while, then it flipped and it flopped. It flipped and it flopped. Under Biden, it flipped against the United States. Towards the end of Biden, especially with the happening in Gaza, it flipped against the United States. So even before the Iran war, the happenings in Gaza really influenced Indonesian perceptions of the United States. But all the others, what I was surprised is Cambodia. Because remember, Cambodia in 2012 spoiled ASEAN record, no joint communique because of the issue of the South China Sea. So the perception is very much that Cambodia is really bandwagoning with China. But now in this report, Cambodia is edging closer to the United States as well. It's still tilting towards China, but not as heavily. In fact, it's close to Indonesia. Indonesia is now tilting to China at 12%, and Cambodia also. But Laos is really over-dependent on China. And the Philippines, on the other hand, is also becoming very dependent on the United States. So when we are talking about ASEAN strategic autonomy, the position of these two extremes, the Philippines over 40% tilting to the US, Laos over 40% tilting to China. The middle one is Vietnam. Vietnam is like Indonesia now. It's really very even. This is going to make consensus quite difficult within ASEAN if we have on issues like the South China Sea, for example. Now that the Philippines is chair of ASEAN, if there's going to be a joint communique that wants a strong language, for example, on China's assertiveness in the South China Sea and so on, the spoiler will not be Cambodia. It will probably be Laos who will say, we don't agree to that language. So this is going to be something that we can watch. Yeah. We have a saying that Southeast Asia is really the epicenter of the US-China rivalry. But after reading this report, I said, no, it isn't. Why? Because the United States is not even in the running. In almost all, except on the niche issues where the US is heading, is considered to be to has a niche in transnational crimes and also this technology and something like that. It's not in the running. My parents, both of them, were educated in the US. There used to be a lot of American dreams. Many people wanted to go and visit the United States either to study or for holiday and so on. And now it's not anywhere. Economically, it's not, the distance between China and United States is really quite big now. It's not a place to visit, it's not a place to study, it's not a place to do business. Now, but what interesting thing is that, there's great diversity. We know that Japan is considered to be the most trusted, and it continues to be considered, very important for investment, for technology, for food security. Japan is very high for the food security in the region, and also a place for visits. So not just at the business to business level, but also at the people to people level. It's a favorite place also for students to study. But it is not considered to be a country of the future anymore. Now, this is maybe this is related to the aging society and the perception that this is not where growth is to be. So when asked which country will be the most important, it is China. And I think that although the aging society in China could also be a problem, we haven't really dug deeper into this, whether the demand will continue to grow in China. But what is important, I think, is that, the other dialogue partners. The EU is really making a lot of headway here now. We used to be very annoyed with the EU all the time. Whenever there is a language about the EU, we get annoyed because they try to regulate the whole world. Yeah, or is that on energy, on climate, on palm oil, on whatever. They tend to preach to us, and we tend to get very annoyed with them. Yeah, but at the same time, now it is a favorite partner on not just a lot of niche issues, but when you look at who do you want to work with. Who do we think that should be the ASEAN partner to support what has been destroyed by the global power? Multilateralism, rule-based international order, free trade, democracy, EU. So this is really something that, and this is what I believe it's not just middle powers, because a lot of EU countries are middle powers, a lot of ASEAN countries are middle power, but in terms of regional organizations, the middle powers cooperation and then regional cooperation between ASEAN and EU, I think can really be the way forward to champion all of these causes. So this is a more bottom-up process, as Adina said. Surprises, disappointment. I'm continued to be disappointed with how low India registers. Now, so now we have both sides. Dino is a member of that India-Indonesia dialogue and so on. Efforts have been made, and whenever we talk about India, we talk about 2,000 years old civilizational network between Southeast Asia and India. After all, this Southeast Asia is mostly an Hindu-Buddhist, Indianized Southeast Asia, that particularly maritime ones. And we continue to talk with a lot of nostalgia, and we talk about the needs now to strengthen relations. But when you did that research when only there were 4 dialogue partners, where India, China, the US, and Japan, India registered 0. And now they've improved, very active here. The workshop on the South China Sea, which Dino's father, Dr. Hashim Jalal, coordinated for a long time, was funded by Canada. So I think that welcome back to Canada. We hope to see better results. Now, finally, I'm disappointed with the reading on the ASEAN member states. Congratulations to Singapore for scoring good perceptions on leadership on a number of issues, but I'm totally disappointed with Indonesia, which regarded itself as a natural leader in ASEAN, to be a norm entrepreneur and so on, but clearly we have been absent. We have been missing in action for the past maybe 15 years, 10 years. So it's not surprising. So unlike the United States, the perceptions punish you, tells you the truth of what is happening. And this, I think, is a reflection of where Indonesia is now in the region. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bu Dewi. I think one key takeaway from Bu Dewi is that perception reflects reality to some extent, and perception punish you. I mean, the rejection to the tariff policy affect the perceptions toward the United States. The Indonesia's action and other ASEAN members' action or lack thereof creates disappointment in the perceptions on their contribution to several strategic issues. But what comes into my mind is actually how strong is this connection? How reflective is this perception towards what is actually happening. For example, the perceptions towards the United States might be getting into a more negative side, but it is a structural reality that the United States is a very important player in the region, right? I mean, so I would like to ask to Dr. Tang on this. So first, again, the same question: what do you find is interesting in the survey? And I would like to add the question on how to say, what does it mean to the real world, and how actually this perceptions actually reflects what is happening in the real world.
Thank you, Bapak. Good afternoon, Excellencies. Thank you for Bapak Andino for the kind invitation. And Bapak Tino, I join you and your colleagues in honoring the service and sacrifices of fallen Indonesian heroes. And also, on a positive note, happy, warm and happy Eid Mubarak and Hari Raya greetings to our friends here and also across the Indo-Pacific region and our Muslim friends celebrating the festival period. For me, I agree with Ibu Devi that not too surprising in the sense that many surveys being done. But what is important for this survey and also for the one that is ISIS going to be launched at 7th April is that these are the first grassroots survey that really evaluate Trump 2.0. Yeah, in terms of the reciprocal tariffs, maybe not in terms of Iran, but we are in a way assessing and giving some feedback. In a practical sense, I think it's very important because in many ways, bureaucrats' hands are tied, government hands are tied, because we literally have the gun towards our head in terms of tariffs, right? We cannot say what we really think. This is where these surveys are very important because it conveys some sentiments where governments could not express their full views. It provides some kind of feedback, and it's also feedback not just from the government, but this survey say from the academic, from business, more importantly from the youth in that sense, right? So nothing that really jumps out that surprises, but more in terms of concerns. One particular concern is that when your question you ask about positive contributions, we see that a lot of responses, majority of them, plurality says none. We cannot identify any of the major dialogue partners or the 11 dialogue partners as taking a leading role or positive contribution. That says or tells us there is a perhaps a leadership vacuum or a country that can make a positive impact in that sense. So who is providing the public good, especially now in the wake of more isolationalists, more withdrawal from US or US having their America First policy. So who is taking care of the world in terms of climate, in terms of energy transition, and so on. And I think important your survey shows that in terms of hard security, be it Gaza, be it Ukraine, be it cross-strait, we don't find any particular dialogue partner who are major powers and also members of the United Security Council jump up to take a leadership role in that sense. So we all have dropped the ball, and nobody seems to be willing to pick up the ball in that sense. So who do we turn to? And this is a very interesting question because it may not be as gloomy as Ambassador has mentioned during her remarks and but you know as well. There seems to be a role for the middle powers. And I would broadly define, and maybe sacrilege or telling me for me to broadly define, maybe we can perceive in a general sense, middle power can be anybody but the United States. It can be anybody who's willing to jump into the ring to provide some kind of leadership, not unilaterally, but it has to be collective leadership in that sense. It has to be the leader that can rally the troops in the sense, whoever we name it, middle power, global south, NAM, or ASEAN, or APSEP, whatever nomenclature that we put together is less important, but we must have a critical mass of states willing to have the capacity to invest the political will, the political resources to drive through the world's problems, the climate change, energy, hard security is going to be a problem. Imagine where would Ukraine be without the support of the EU? The world will be very different. And the message that it sends that might is right will be very different as well in that sense. So there is a room for the EU, for others to step up, and they have stepped up. But the question is, how long can this be sustained? Do we need to institutionalize such partnerships, right? So all of us want the US to remain engaged globally and in the region. It would be a nightmare scenario for the US to be withdrawn totally for US and also for us. So, but at the same time, it would be remiss and irresponsible for us not to have a plan B and plan C. So this relates to my next point, which is polls after polls have put Japan as the most trusted dialogue partner. And I think we have all have very good feelings and a lot of reservoir of goodwill. When we match a question of Japan is trusted, but in terms of the future of the region, we look to China. In terms of the exports, in terms of what do we want to build things, who do we look to in that sense for the future, is China. So this seems to be a very important gap in the sense that China, in terms of trust, ranks relatively lower compared to the other dialogue partners. So we are trusting a major power, a very important trade partner. We trust in the future, but we don't trust in the present in that sense. So where is that? What is our future going to be based on? Very shaky grounds in that sense, right? We trust Japan a lot, but we cannot see ourselves building a future with Japan because we don't see that in that sense, right? So contemporary, how do we match between our perception of trust, this reservoir that we have, Japan have with us, basically the credit that you have in the trust bank, what do we do with it in that sense, right? So it's a challenge for Japan and for us to actually build through. It's a challenge for China to address the distrust issues that it has with us. Perhaps China maybe could listen more to the region to say, why are we fearful? Why are we distrustful? What are the problems? And not all the problems are caused by the Americans. We do have insecurities, security dilemmas that we need to resolve legitimately in that sense. So there needs to be listening, talking, and empathy, and also opening of minds on all sides. Lastly, let me pick up the point on Ibu Devi's mentioning about regionalship in ASEAN. I know Ambassador Gerard would not want me to emphasize this because Singapore's leadership is very unique in that sense, right? Yeah. But in terms of functionality, Singapore jumps up in terms of industry, in terms of businesses and so on, right? But I want to relate to the larger point. In terms of ASEAN leadership, in terms of ASEAN, we put too much emphasis on the chair. We look to the ASEAN chair for leadership for that particular year, and the next year goes on. But in terms of this survey, maybe one takeaway is that should ASEAN rethink the notion of leadership, where leadership can be sectoral, can be piecemeal, whichever country AMS that maybe have the capacity, maybe have the political will, let them lead working with the ASEAN chair in that sense. So not all the onus or responsibility or the focus is on the chair because it's a rolling stone in that sense, right? But in terms of on the ground, we do see that practically there are businesses, not Singapore state per se, not Malaysian state per se, but there are businesses on the ground. They are clearly providing that kind of positive contribution and leadership. So how can we translate that kind of results on the ground into regional leadership to build the ASEAN community in that sense? So maybe perhaps the larger issue is on rethinking ASEAN leadership. Thank you, Bapak.
Thank you very much. Let's give a big round of applause to Dr. Tang Siew Moon. I think both speakers, both panelists have highlighted important interpretations of the survey, and we are very thankful to it, to reflect on it. And I think the major highlight is, if we could summarize it into one term, it is contradictions. We see a world where anxiety reigns, but at the same time, we need leadership. We need some leadership role is played by this major actors, but it's not there. We need public goods, but no one is providing it. So that's the contradiction. We also see the contradiction in terms of we are trusting Japan today, but we don't see that the future is with Japan, but with China. But at the same time, it is not supported with trust that is now is still not existent. So I think these contradictions creates questions to ASEAN and of course to all of the people in this room. So I'm inviting questions from all of the participants today. You can raise your hands and introduce yourself, and after that, ask your question to the panelists or to the survey team. Please, if any of you have question, yes, the guy in the back. Mention your name, your institution, and your question.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Delvin Atashaputra. I'm from Mulawarma University. I am an international relations student and I'm currently on my 6th semester. Okay, so my question is about the point in the survey says about that China perceived as going to be the more important partner, especially for economic development for ASEAN, right? So my question is, I'm I'm wondering like how it's going to be for ASEAN when they perceive China as an important partner. Like I'm wondering on how the dynamics or the fluctuative in the all of the ASEAN countries, like are we going to be competitive, and how competitive are we going to be more closer to China as a partner, and or is it going to be boomerang for us and it's just disintegrated ASEAN even worse? Probably we don't even. That's why I'm wondering like how the dynamics will be, and if we perceive China as the important partner for economic development. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Another question? No? So let's start with that question first. Bu Dewi, do you have comments on that? I think that's very much picking up from...
That is, a double-edged sword to be with China. Because on the one hand, everybody wants to trade with China. I mean, that is always been the major theme. That's why Marco Polo went there, yeah? Everybody wanted to trade with China. Europe wanted to open up China. So there's the potential of the Chinese market has lured us. But the market there also China is also a factory of the world. And the whole of this Trump tariff war originated in China because China is just out competing everybody. And this has always been, in fact, both the attraction and the concerns with China. Even forget about the militarization of the South China Sea. Just the issues of economics. For Indonesia alone, we open our economy to China. China is not just a market for us, but it's a major source of investment. But even then, when we signed up the ASEAN-China free trade, if you remember, we didn't do anything to prepare ourselves, but when it became operationalized, this demonstration on the street, because our manufacturing and our agriculture sectors were not ready. And they wanted the government to revoke that. Now, we have benefited from that, but we also suffered from deindustrialization. Our textile factories are closing because we're not competitive. So we have already suffered from that already. Try to find fruits in the supermarket. You will not find Indonesian fruits there. They're mostly imported. They're mostly from China. So I think this continues to be a major issue. When it comes to investment also, there's a difference between Chinese investment and Japanese investment. It doesn't make sense for Japanese investors to bring workers from Japan because they are very expensive. It doesn't make any sense for Europeans or American investors to come here and build factories and bring their workers from overseas. But the Chinese do that. They operate from the white-collar workers to the blue-collar workers. So this is becoming an issue. So if you, I did a paper on this. when look at Indonesian perception, and I'm sure it's also reflected in other countries, that we think that China is very important. It is extremely important for us to continue to be close partner with China, but we are worried about Chinese workers. We are worried about Chinese imports, and we are worried about other factors, but mostly the displacement of our workers and the displacement of our products. And all other countries have the same problem. So the idea is not to do it the way that Trump does it, but clearly there are ways that we need to negotiate also with China. Indonesia suffers from a trade imbalance. We have trade surplus with the United States, but with China, no country has trade surplus. Every country in the world, I'm not sure about Australia, but clearly, most countries do have trade deficits, and this is something that I think that we need to deal with China.
Thank you very much, Devi.
Thank you for the question. I'm not a trade person, or I'm an economist, so bear with me for making some general statements. Statistically, ASEAN has a trade deficit of some $1 trillion with China in 2025. So trade benefits China more than it benefits ASEAN as a whole. For Indonesia, last 2025 was $20 billion in that sense. So I think the trade relations between ASEAN and China is still being rewritten. It's evolving, and definitely, as Professor David has mentioned, that we have to look at competitiveness, where if China is more competitive and we not only lose market share, but we lose our manufacturing capacity, it's not just a business factor, but it impacts jobs and livelihoods. And that has political consequences as well, and social stability. So we have to take that into consideration. It's also about opening up economies in Southeast Asia, but also China has opened up. Whether China buys more in terms of moving from a manufacturing export-led to a consumer economy, that is something that remains to be seen. So I don't have an answer for it, but I think it's still a very fluid situation. Right now, it may not be a major issue, but as we see in textiles in Indonesia, it's already a live issue. In Malaysia, it's the furniture industry. In Thailand, it's automobile industry, and you see that sectors are being affected. Would that affect other sectors? It remains to be seen.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Tang. I think from the perspective of the survey organizer and researchers, I think it is very important to not overextend the findings beyond the how to say, the limits of the question of the perceptions. I mean, yes, it is true that respondents are answering that China is the most important partner for the future, but well, that's a perception that China is important, but perception that China is the most important for the future does not necessarily mean, for example, that we need to be orbiting towards China. So it's a different thing. So I think this is where we need to look at other questions as well, not only at that particular question. Well, it's maybe partly our mistake to highlight this very catchy things, yeah? But it is important to also look at other questions as well, where well, anxieties on the imbalances with China, anxieties on the security relationship with China remains there. So I think what it shows is that ASEAN recognized that it is inevitable that we need to work with China. It's difficult now. We still have some issues, but we need to, because it's a geographic, it's a economic reality that we need to work with them, and it is inevitable. So yes, it is inevitable that the future will be dependent on how we manage the relationship with China. But that is not the same with we need to align with China. So it's a different different thing altogether. So the question stops at the most important partner for the future, not who you should align with in the future. So it's a different thing.
There's an interesting one on focus insights on Trump's tariff.
Yeah.
Here it says, what should the countries do beside diversification? So I look here, my country needs to diversify our trade relations. That's overwhelming, majority says that. And then it says, my country needs to get closer to China. Here is evenly divided. It's about 36% says we need to get closer to China, but 38.87% says remain neutral, and the rest, 21% oppose that. But the overwhelming majority argues that my country needs to get closer to the European Union. You only ask two questions: China and the European Union, as a counter, as a strategy to mitigate the Trump tariff. And here, 61% of the ASEAN people surveyed say that we should get closer to the European Union.
So less resistance.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for pointing that out. That shows that if we look at the data from the survey, we can get clearer picture. So we recommend you to look at the website and to the report. Okay, so now I'm moving to the second session. If you have any more question, yes, please. Yeah. This year, no. But last year, yes.
I'm curious
Because
to
she has
know.
another survey on the middle power survey.
Yeah, we have another survey. Prof. Dewi, Dr. Tang, Dr. Sofan, I'm curious to know, we hear diversification has always been the preference now, be it from the people and the government. But if we talk about diversification, the sector, particularly I'm talking about the emerging security issues that probably in 10 years it's going to be intensifying, like on critical minerals, energy, and critical technologies and so on. I wonder if you have an area where you are worried that in the coming years or a decade, our region or our country is facing greater pressure to choose. And in this case, yes, it's easy to say that we can simply say that we don't have to choose, but these areas, technologies and the critical technologies particularly, and minerals, it's not easy to say so. Is there an area where you're worried about that, and which area is that? And first is also how that we can navigate that from now on, the strategic choice that we can make today.
Yes, please.
Yeah, so I'm from FPCI. I'm not part of the survey. But again, I was in Europe and in the United States, and the feeling was there was very low confidence in the future of Europe. Pessimism is high in the United States also, because all the things that are going on. Is there any revelation that Southeast Asians have greater confidence in the future of a region? Because I would love to use this when you speak abroad, and secondly, this thing about rules-based world order. I have found, based on my experience, that it meant more to Westerners, because their historical upbringing is about the rule of law and so on. So, when I was in my diplomatic upbringing, we talk about other things, but not much about rules-based international order. Right? Our Western friends talk a lot more about that than we do in Southeast Asia, at least in Indonesia. So my question to you is, have you found that Southeast Asians in general, they think that rules-based international order is an important thing, right? So I would love to see if there's any revelations on that.
To Jenny, who's not a member of the survey, it's going to be extremely difficult if Indonesia, which already signed the very unreciprocal, agreement or reciprocal tariff with the United States. If we ratify that, then Indonesia will not have any room to maneuver, because somebody did a chat GPT check, out of 200 something points, Indonesia say I shall over 200 of them. But for us, in terms of foreign policy choice, strategic autonomy is the Article 5. Article 5.1, 0.2, and 3, because it commits Indonesia to follow whatever the US says. If the US says no agreements or with other countries on certain issues that would impact Americans' economic interests as well as wider national security, then Indonesia must adhere to that as well. So if we are to ratify that, that's why we get so angry about it. That's why I wrote about that. Then we are going really to abandon our free and active foreign policy. Malaysia has already decided not to go with that. So with Indonesia, the negotiators still insist, but most of the negotiators are not really IR people. So I hope that they will pay attention, in the current dynamics. If we sign that, if we ratify that, then I think that we'll be locked into a non-strategic choice. Put it that way. Yeah, we're going to put ourselves into that. So, Dr. Dino, in terms of rule-based international, maybe we don't say it, but Southeast Asia, ASEAN, and Indonesia is a very strong believer in international law. If you look at, we are as maritime areas, who fought for UNCLOS? Hashim Jalal was a champion of international law. Who talks about sovereignty, respect for territorial integrity, respect for non-interference in each other's affairs? ASEAN countries made a sacred cow out of that, yeah? But it's from the UN Charter, because we believe that the protection for smaller countries, of middle powers, will be international law. If we have no international law, now we have international law that is not being respected. You have this, those who are strong can do whatever they like, and those who are weak will just suffer what they must. The Thucydides adage will become reality, which Thucydides did not want it. So if you look at the ASEAN outlook on Indo-Pacific, it's very clear. ASEAN supports international law, multilateralism, and so on. Yeah, but we may not.
Because we know when the Russians invaded Ukraine, there was a lot of support towards Russia, right?
Yeah.
So a lot
Yeah.
of these things.
Yeah.
That's the background of my question.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
we're on the same page on that.
Yeah.
But you gotta have ways to grasp it to understand that.
Well, there is no direct question to the respondents on are they believing in rules-based order, but there were questions on the impact of tariff to the rules-based order and multilateral trade and multilateralism. And from that, what we get is that the tariff was perceived negatively because it is threatening the continuity of the multilateralism and a multilateral trade regime. So in that sense, there is an indirect sense that, well, international rules-based order to a certain degree is important. But I think the case is a bit different when we are talking about Russia, China, US, because people see not the rules issue. People generally see who are doing what. So in some parts of Southeast Asia, there is a perception on how to say why there are relatively significant part of the respondents giving positive assessment to Russia several years ago on the issue of Russia's invasion, because Russia is perceived as the how to say the antithesis of the West, which is perceived in some parts of the Southeast Asia as being inconsistent with what they say and perceived negatively as colonial or imperialist power. So I think in general I think we can confirm it more convincingly if we put direct question on how trusting are you to the international on the importance of international order. But I think from what the patterns of different answers in different questions have shown in the last three surveys at least, because they are looking at Russia, US, China, the war in Ukraine, in Gaza, etc. So I think in general there is a sense that international rules-based order is important, but it should not be seen as the only important thing. It is also connected to their perceptions on other things, mainly their perceptions on the relationship with the great powers, their perceptions, the historical baggage of the colonial experience, and those things. So it's important, but it is not the only picture in which is shaping the perceptions of the people of ASEAN. That gives us how to say an incentive to put it in a more direct question in the project this year. Hopefully, we can continue that. Dr. Tan.
Thank you. Let me try to unpack the question of choice, strategic choice. I think we are using that term as too big a blanket term that conveys certain strategic fixation, as if we are going to be forming an alliance with the United States, with China, and so on. So it's not like a marriage where you marry one and that's for life till death do us part. But in many senses, ASEAN member states have multiple choices, and we make choices every day in that sense, in the business that we deal with and so on. I think one critical test that we are grappling with, I can give you an example, is 5G network. Yeah, there have been instances where a certain country have licensed Huawei to roll out its 5G network. Then you find that Western countries, US or UK, EU, maybe even Japan and others, Western allied countries, will say, if you're using Huawei, then we may not work with you on certain things and so on. So this is where I think member states are being forced to choose in a certain sector in the telecommunications. If you choose Huawei, then you're willing to forego certain partnerships in terms of IT development, your data centers, your chip technology, and so on. So this is where our arms are being twisted in that sense. So we have to weigh between what are the goodies that going with Huawei or the Chinese conglomerates and companies that would bring to us, or going with the United States. The problem is that, as Ibu Devi has mentioned, is United States giving us a choice, right? How can you be in a race when United States is not even lining up to run? It's only China that is running, that is giving us a lot of options, but where are the other options to actually choose from in that sense, right? So then we can see a lot of surveys, a lot of perception that we see a lot of, on the ground, a lot of China, 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 China. And it's a reality. And our American friends are very frustrated and always remind us that reality on the ground is that America has the largest foreign direct investment stock still. So it's the largest investor in the region, but it's not being recognized in that sense, right? The problem is that, yes, it is a reality, but these companies have been here for 20, 30, 40 years. So it's no longer making headlines. Else China investments, so-called investments and business coming in are new and creating new jobs. So there's more hubris, there's more ministerial visits, there's more Chinese scholarships and so on. So you can see the perception on China's goodwill and interactions are more. But what you see from US is disbandment of USAID, US Fulbright scholarships being cut, right? US visas being, you can see a lot of negative stories as if they are not welcome, quote unquote, in the United States in that sense. So this creates a different perception of what the United States represents and what China represents. I think the biggest irony is that 5 years ago, none of us in this room would say or would agree that or would hear believably China is a champion for free trade. Now China is the champion for free trade, whereas America is the one that is, quote unquote, not advocating that much of free trade on its own terms in that sense. there's a role reversal in that sense. Yeah, Song Sang. Yeah, so we in a different world in that sense. So whether reality matches up with perception, I'm not sure, but at least uh, on X, on social media, on people on the streets, is what we are hearing. This is what is being discussed in that sense. So sometimes perceptions does give rise to reality. Yeah, and like it or not, our policymakers, our politicians are also human beings. We have our minds to be perceived, to receive these perceptions, and it can cloud our judgments in that sense. So again, it remains to be seen. So I would take the word choice not too literally, in the sense that it's not too a hard line between we have to make a choice now or we are aligning in one. It's not a marriage in that sense, but we can be more promiscuous in terms of who we actually trade with. And I think diversification is not a new term, but in light of Trump 2.0, diversification is given more impetus, more urgency. I think for ASEAN, the strategy has always been to diversify. The question is, who do we diversify with? It's the same group of players, right? We always been diversified with EU and so on, right? We always wanted a free trade FTA with EU, and right now there's more impetus with Indonesia on a bilateral deal and so on. So maybe that's one of the positives that come out from 2.0. But more importantly, again, beating on a old war drum story, is that ASEAN needs to look for inward. Our intra-regional trade is still about 22-23%. So as we look to trade externally to broaden our trade partners, but we are not trading enough ourselves in that sense. So what economic community that we are building is we are growing, the economic pie is growing, but to be more resilient, we can rely on more on each other in that sense, rather than with our friends and partners from overseas. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tang. Let's give a big round of applause to the panelists. And since the time is up, according to the committee, I would like to close this session, but with a very strong note of thanks to the panelists for providing us with important insights for the survey, to think about and reflect more on the results of the survey, both for refining the survey for the next iteration of the survey, but also for what are the consequences of these findings in understanding today's world. As you mentioned, perception shapes reality, as well as this reality is shaping perceptions. I will end with highlighting one important thing, which I think consistently mentioned from Pak Dino, Ambassador Ambra, and the panelists, is that now we are amidst a lot of uncertainties. If we return to Gramsci's quote, it is true that the old world is dying, the new world has yet to be born, and it is time for monsters. But at the same time, the survey is actually also showing that the people of ASEAN are basically optimistic people. They see challenges, but when asked about what to do, they are not looking for giving up. They see that we need to do something. We need to reinvigorate multilateralism. We need to diversify. We need to work more with other partners in EU, in CPTPP, in Canada, in Japan, and everyone. So the world, it may be burning, but ASEAN, as always, has this optimism to move forward, and hopefully we could bring that optimism together and ensure that the future will be better than what we may imagine in today's situation. Thank you very much, and see you in the next survey.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, all the panelists and participants. Before we move forward, we kindly ask the panelists to stay on the stage as we invite Dr. Dino and Ambassador Ambra for in front to take a picture together. Please be my guest. Please, everyone's on the stage, and please holding a report book that we already give before. The report book, yes. All right, please, everyone, look at the camera and smile. On my count, 1, 2, 3. Another one, 1, 2, 3. One more. All right, 3. All right, everyone, thank you so much. Please give a big round of applause to our panelists and our moderator for today. Before we conclude, I would like everyone to invite to check their slide in the front. You may please scan the QR code to access FPCI survey on ASEAN Dialogue Partners 2025 report. On behalf of Foreign Policy Community of Indonesia, FPCI, FPCI Research and Analyze Unit, and supported by the missions of Canada to ASEAN, we extend our sincere appreciations for your valuable presence today. Before you leave the venue, please feel free to enjoy the remaining snacks and refreshment provided at back. Thank you once again. We wish you have a pleasant afternoon and productive day ahead. Salam sayang ASEAN.